The crisp autumn evening at my in-laws' estate was supposed to be a celebration of family, tradition, and success. The Montgomery family's annual harvest gathering was always an extravagant affair. The sprawling gardens transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights, the scent of pumpkin spice and cinnamon hanging in the air, and the sound of classical music drifting through the carefully manicured grounds. Adjusting my emerald silk dress, a designer piece that had cost more than my first car, I watched guests arrive through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the main hall. The dress had been chosen carefully, projecting the image of success my husband, Marcus, insisted we maintain. Everything in our lives revolved around appearances, the right clothes, the right car, the right address. Even our marriage had become more about optics than substance, though I hadn't fully admitted that to myself yet. TechVision Solutions, my company, had just secured its biggest contract to date, a multi-million-dollar deal with a major healthcare provider that would revolutionize patient care systems nationwide. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and relentless determination. Marcus had once laughed at my vision of creating innovative healthcare technology. "Stick to what you know, darling," he had said with condescension. "Leave the big business decisions to those who understand them." Yet here he was, basking in the reflected glow of my success, working the room with his practiced charm. His perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit and carefully styled salt and pepper hair made him look every bit the successful executive he pretended to be. He accepted congratulations for TechVision's achievements as if they were his own, while I stood back, observing the subtle power plays at work. His family had always been this way, old money wrapped in new ambition. The Montgomerys had built their fortune in real estate generations ago, and every new family member was expected to contribute to the dynasty. Marcus had been groomed from birth to take over his father's development company, but recent whispers suggested the empire was crumbling. I had noticed his tension, his hushed phone calls, the way he had been retreating into his home office for longer hours. "Sarah, darling," my mother-in-law, Eleanor Montgomery, approached with her usual air of regal authority, her silver hair impeccably coiffed, her Hermes scarf draped just so. "The caterers need your approval on the dessert presentation. Do be a dear and handle that while I greet the Hendersons." It wasn't a request. It never was with Eleanor. As I moved through the crowd, I caught snippets of conversation that made my skin prickle. Marcus's cousin Claire, never one to miss an opportunity for drama, held court near the grand staircase. "Of course, it's all very impressive," she said, her voice carrying just enough to ensure I could hear. "But one has to wonder about the stability of it all. These tech startups can be so volatile." I might have dismissed it as typical family sniping if I hadn't noticed Richard Montgomery, Marcus's father, watching me with an unusually calculating expression. The evening wore on, a blend of subtle power plays and forced pleasantries. I had just begun to think we might escape without incident when Marcus appeared at my side, his grip on my elbow firm. "We need to talk," he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. "Now." He steered me toward his father's study, the one room in the house that had always been off-limits to anyone outside the immediate family. As we entered, I found Richard and Eleanor already there, along with Marcus's brother, Thomas, who was examining documents on the massive mahogany desk. The heavy door clicked shut behind me. The warmth of the autumn evening gave way to an unsettling chill. "Sarah," Richard began, his voice carrying the tone of a business negotiation, "I think it's time we had a frank discussion about TechVision's future." He lifted a crystal tumbler of scotch to his lips, the amber, liquid catching the light. "The family has concerns." My spine stiffened. "The family?" I kept my voice steady. "I wasn't aware the family had any stake in my company." "That's precisely the problem," Eleanor interjected, her manicured nails drumming against the leather arm. of her chair. This notion of your company has become rather problematic. Thomas slid a document toward me. We've drawn up a reasonable proposal. Given the market conditions and the family's interests, transferring ownership of TechVision to Montgomery Holdings is the most prudent course of action. I stared at the paper, a transfer of ownership agreement. Marcus's signature was already on it. My husband, the man who had vowed to stand by my side. He had signed away my life's work without hesitation. This is absurd, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. TechVision is mine. I built it from nothing. Marcus stepped forward, his expression patronizing. Darling, be reasonable. The healthcare industry is volatile. You've done well, but it's time to let professionals handle things. The family can protect what you've built. I laughed, cold, humorless. You mean strip it for parts to save your failing real estate empire? The slight flinch in Richard's expression confirmed my suspicion. Eleanor's face hardened. Mind your tone, Sarah. Remember who welcomed you into this family, who gave you the connections that made your little venture possible. My tone? I turned to face her fully. You mean the tone of someone watching her so-called family try to steal everything she's worked for? Those connections you're so proud of? I never used them. Not once. Every contract, every deal, every success, I earned through my own merit. Marcus scoffed. You really think you did this on your own? That the Montgomery name had nothing to do with your success? Sign the papers, Sarah. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I picked up the document, studying it for a moment before tearing it in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed like a gunshot. No! The slap came fast and hard, sending me stumbling backward. The sting of it was nothing compared to the cold realization that none of them, my husband, his parents, his brother, looked shocked. I straightened, tasting blood on my lip. The room had gone deathly silent. Thank you, I said softly, touching my fingertips to the cut. Marcus frowned. What? Thank you for finally showing me exactly who you are. I met each of their gazes in turn. You've just made what comes next so much easier. I turned toward the door. Eleanor stepped aside almost involuntarily. Richard's voice followed me. If you walk out that door, you walk away from everything, the family, the connections, all of it. You'll have nothing. I smiled. No, Richard. I'll have everything that matters, and you'll never see it coming. The night air was crisp as I stepped outside. Behind me, laughter and music continued as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed, and they had no idea what was coming next. The car I had bought with my own money, despite Marcus's insistence on using one of the family's vehicles, sat at the end of the drive. As I walked toward it, my phone buzzed with incoming messages and calls. I pulled it out and saw Marcus's name flashing on the screen. Without hesitation, I dropped the phone into one of the ornamental fountains flanking the driveway. The security guard at the gate, a man who had watched me come and go for 15 years, hesitated. I saw him glance toward the house, presumably waiting for instructions. I stepped out of my car and walked to his booth. Mr. Montgomery might not want, he began, but I cut him off. I'm not a Montgomery anymore, James, and this is the last time you'll ever have to open this gate for me. Something in my voice must have convinced him because, a moment later, the massive iron gates began to swing open. As I drove through them for the final time, I caught a glimpse of the mansion in my rearview mirror, a fortress of wealth and privilege that had held me captive for far too long. The split in my lip throbbed, a physical reminder of the price of freedom. But as I accelerated onto the main road, leaving behind the manicured lawns and the carefully cultivated image of perfection, I felt something unexpected: relief. They had shown their true colors, revealed their ultimate plan. And in doing so, They had freed me from any lingering doubts or obligations. Now, it was time to show them exactly who they had underestimated. The first night of freedom felt anything but liberating. I drove aimlessly through the city's rain-slicked streets, neon lights blurring through my windshield as I processed the enormity of what had just happened. My face throbbed where Marcus had struck me, a constant reminder of how quickly 15 years of marriage could crumble into violence and betrayal. I pulled into the parking lot of the Four Seasons, the last place the Montgomerys would expect to find me. They'd be watching my apartment, the office, even my parents' house in Connecticut. But they'd never think to look at a hotel less than 2 miles from their estate. The Montgomerys didn't believe in hiding in plain sight. Their worldview was too wrapped up in grand gestures and power moves to consider simplicity. The concierge didn't blink at my appearance, split lip, smeared mascara, and an evening gown at midnight. In the world of luxury hotels, discretion was worth more than curiosity. As I swiped my corporate card, I realized it might be the last time I could use it. No doubt Marcus was already moving to freeze my accounts, both personal and professional. The suite felt vast and empty, its luxury a hollow echo of the life I'd just left behind. Kicking off my heels, I walked to the window and stared out at the city that had been my home for 15 years. Somewhere out there, the Montgomery family was already working to destroy everything I had built. My phone lay at the bottom of their fountain, but I knew exactly what was happening. Marcus would be calling emergency board meetings, contacting our major clients, spinning a story about my emotional instability and reckless business decisions. Richard would be activating his network, ensuring doors closed before I could even reach for their handles. Eleanor would be handling the social fallout, hosting intimate dinners where she'd sadly explain how I had lost my way and how the family had tried everything to help. But they had underestimated 2 critical factors. First, TechVision's success wasn't built on the Montgomery name. It was built on revolutionary healthcare technology that our clients couldn't easily replace. Second, I had spent years building relationships with our partners based on trust and results, not social connections and old money. I pulled my laptop from my purse. Thankfully, I'd started carrying it everywhere since noticing Marcus's strange behavior weeks ago. I began to type, documenting everything that had happened in Richard's study. Every word, every threat, every moment leading up to Marcus's violence. When I finished, I sent the account to my private email server, one Marcus didn't know existed. Next, I logged into TechVision's secure system. As expected, multiple login attempts had already been made from Marcus's IP address. He'd never bothered to learn the technical side of my business, always dismissing it as beneath him. Now that arrogance would cost him. I initiated the emergency protocols I had built into the system years ago, not out of suspicion, but out of the same meticulous attention to detail that had helped me build TechVision in the first place. Within minutes, all critical data was backed up to secure servers, access codes were changed, and key employees were notified of an emergency protocol activation. A separate email went out to my most trusted team members, people I had hired, myself, whose loyalty was to the company rather than the Montgomery name. The sun was rising by the time I finished, casting long shadows across the hotel room. My body ached from tension, my mind raced with everything I still needed to do. But beneath the exhaustion and pain, something else was building. A cold, clear certainty about what came next. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. My heart raced. Had they found me already? But it was just the hotel manager, personally delivering a package that had been sent to my attention. Inside was a burner phone and a business card from Diana Chen, one of Silicon Valley's most ruthless corporate lawyers. A handwritten note accompanied it. "I've been waiting for your call. Time to show them what real power looks like." I smiled. Remembering the lunch Diana and I had shared 6 months ago when she had warned me about rumors of Montgomery Holdings' financial troubles. She had seen through the family's facade then, recognizing in me a kindred spirit, someone else who had built something real in a world of smoke and mirrors. Picking up the burner phone, I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "They finally showed their hand?" she asked without preamble. "Yes. And you're ready to fight back?" I touched my split lip, feeling the swelling that would serve as a reminder of this night for days to come. "They tried to take everything from me, Diana. Now I'm going to show them exactly what that feels like." "Good," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Let's get to work." I was systematically dismantling their business empire. The financial records I discovered on our home network had revealed more than just their failing projects. They exposed a web of questionable dealings and potential regulatory violations. "Look at this," I told Diana, pointing to a series of transactions buried in their corporate filings. "They've been using shell companies to hide their losses and maintain their credit rating. Every major project they've undertaken in the last 3 years has been built on a foundation of financial manipulation." Diana's eyes narrowed as she studied the documents. "This goes beyond just bad business practices. Some of these transactions could trigger serious regulatory investigations." "Exactly," I replied, remembering all the times I'd sat through Montgomery family dinners listening to Richard boast about his ability to sidestep regulatory oversight. They've always believed their connections would protect them. Time to test that theory. I assembled a team of forensic accountants and regulatory compliance experts, people who specialized in untangling complex financial schemes. Every discovery was carefully documented and anonymously submitted to the relevant authorities. The Montgomerys had spent decades building a house of cards, believing their social status would shield them from scrutiny. They never imagined that someone who knew their methods intimately would systematically expose their foundation. Marcus attempted to retaliate by reaching out to TechVision's clients, trying to convince them that the company was unstable under my leadership. His efforts backfired spectacularly when several clients forwarded his communications to me, communications that contained proprietary information he shouldn't have had access to. "We can add corporate espionage to the list," Diana noted, reviewing the emails. "He's getting sloppy, desperate." She was right. The Marcus I'd known would never have made such an obvious mistake, but the Marcus I'd known had been a carefully constructed facade. The real man was the one who'd shown himself in his father's study, the one who resorted to violence when he couldn't get his way. The pressure began to show in other ways. Richard canceled his annual charity gala, a first in 30 years. Eleanor was notably absent from her usual social circuit. Thomas, who had always lived in his brother's shadow, attempted to distance himself from the growing scandal by relocating to their London office. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Claire, Marcus's cousin, who had always delighted in spreading family gossip, reached out through an intermediary. Apparently, she had been keeping records of her own, documentation of questionable business practices, recordings of conversations, even photographs from family events that showed a pattern of controlling behavior. "Why would she help us?" Diana asked suspiciously when I shared the information. "Because Claire has always understood something the rest of them never did, that real power lies in information, not intimidation." I remembered how she had always been present at family meetings, seemingly absorbed in her phone but actually observing everything.